The Women of 1862. I'm your trainer, Lori Coffey. Immigrant women face similar tragedies, plus the extra hardships every immigrant population faces. In America, we all have immigrant stories, right? My latest arrival immigrant was Guni, looks like Gunild, but it's pronounced Guni, Jakobsdatter Einong, pictured with my grandmother in this four-generation photo. Born in Norway in 1834, Guni saw and learned the art of rosemaling, a decorative folk art to bring color to every item in the house on those long, dark, frigid Norwegian nights. I'm so glad we moved. The Einong family had left the Tin in Telemark region, the home of cross-country skiing. They used to call it Telemark skiing, but I'm glad we moved from there. Jakob and Anne were a very successful farming family with field and household help and every reason to stay. But the lure of a brighter future for their children called them to leave for America in 1843. Guni was only 9 when the 60-passenger schooner Alita crowded in 187 passengers for the 13-week crossing. Typhoid fever ravaged the ship, and her mother Anne, her aunt Anne, and her sister, a twin, Suzanne, all died on the voyage. In New York City, and speaking no English, Jakob, with his little motherless children, had to find the shipping office. To get to a steamer boat, the Einong family moved all their possessions onto the new ship and headed up the Hudson River to Albany. Then they moved all their possessions to a barge, headed over the Erie Canal. It was slow going, so the passengers often walked beside the barge all the way to Buffalo, the gateway to the Great Lakes. From Buffalo, they moved all their possessions again to traverse the Great Lakes to Wisconsin, a popular stop for Norwegians, as it had a similar climate to Norway, except with milder temperatures. Can you imagine? Again, I'm so glad I live in Florida. From Milwaukee, they pushed or pulled their possessions one final time, the last 30 miles to the town of Muskego, and only the 5th Norwegian settlement in the country. After traveling nearly 4,000 miles on that long and tragic trip, Dad, Jakob, and Guni and the rest of the children made it to their new home. The children spent evenings listening to tales of Norse mythology in the log cabin, mornings eating Norwegian pancakes, and days roaming the fields, picking fresh berries, plums, and nuts with other immigrant children. Of course, they went to school in the winter. Unfortunately, Jakob died just a few years later. Before he died, though, he left each child the enormous gift of 40 acres of land. We don't know how the children survived, but the community certainly came to their aid. All except Suzanne's twin survived into the 20th century. Don't they all kind of look alike? That heavy brow. I think I have it. My sister doesn't, but I do. At 17, Guni marries her childhood friend, the popular and handsome Hans Christian Heg, born just 90 miles from where Guni was born, although they didn't know each other in Norway. His family came to America 7 years before her. He had spent the last 2 years mining gold in California with friends. When news came that his father had died, Hans hurried home to take on his many family duties, including to marry Guni and build them a new house. Based on the book's worth of letters that Hans wrote to Guni throughout the Civil War, they were very compatible. On their 11th anniversary, he wrote, "My dear Guni, yesterday our marriage day, 11 years ago in the old log house. I think we've spent those 11 years as happily as most people. 14 more and we can have our silver wedding." It was not to be. The year after Guni and Hans married, my ancestor, Edmund, joined the family, and Hilda the following year. They lost baby Annette to scarlet fever, but took in orphan Hans Olsen. And finally, baby Elmer Ellsworth came along the year the Civil War started. Who was he named after? As a married farmer and now mill owner and storekeeper, Hans started in public service. Elected to many positions, he was chosen to be a delegate at the state convention, which led him to earning a first for Norwegians. He became the first Norwegian American to be elected to a state office, Wisconsin prison commissioner. He was also the first warden in the United States to encourage education over punishment and open shops to teach the prisoners skills. I have been in that. It's still open. It still houses prisoners. And in the warden's office area, Hans's photo is still hanging on the wall, which is very exciting. When the Civil War broke out, Hans volunteered to lead the first all-Scandinavian regiment. While they were successfully forcing the rebels eastward, her gregarious husband had time to make new friends. When the war is over, he wrote, I'm going to take you and the children on the Mississippi to New Orleans. I have invitations from several steamboat captains to come and stay. In one of his early letters to his dear wife, Hans had said, you may become a widow, but you will never be the widow of a coward. At the age of 28, with 3 small children, she did become a widow of a hero. After Hans was killed leading a charge at the Battle of Chickamauga, Gunild moved her little family to Beloit to be near Wisconsin's first college. They all grew up, were educated, and became a credit to their immigrant single mother. The widow Gunild, who changes her name to Cornelia, spends 59 years encouraging her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren to get an education and make their own mark in the world. Her tribute to Hans was carved into his gravestone. It was part of a poem. He has gone to the last long march, to the land where nevermore shall bugle sound reveille or the dreadful cannon roar. Who dies for country dies not, but lives forevermore. The poet she honored in stone, a woman, poet and author of 1862, Hattie Ting Griswold. Just 20 years earlier, widows like Gunild and writers like Hattie would not have been able to buy or sell their own property. It was nearly impossible to gain custody of their own children in divorce or even after their husband died. And of course, there was no hope for a woman running for office or even voting. Gunild was able to get a court order to be able to care for her own children and to sign legal documents and run her husband's business. Why? Thanks to the first Women's Rights Convention in Seneca Falls, New York in 1848.